Okay. Good evening, everybody. Following is a reminder to meeting attendees that this is a formal meeting. I can advise that members of the public will be given an opportunity to speak during the public open session, but not at other times. The meeting is being filmed, and by being present, attendees are deemed to have agreed to be filmed and to the use of those images and sound recordings. I can advise that attendees should not disclose any personal information of individuals, as this would infringe the data protection right of those individuals. And also can I ask everyone to mute their microphones. I should actually mention the fact that it is a town council meeting this evening. I didn't mention that at the beginning. So first item on the agenda, we have apologies for absence. So far, I have apologies from Councillor Skilton, Councillor Knight and Councillor Woodhead. There are a number of others not present, but we'll move on. Declarations of interest, item 2. Any declarations of interest in relation to any agenda item, either pecuniary or non-pecuniary, please? No. We'll move straight on then to item 3, Town Mayor's announcement. There are none. Item 4, public open session then. Councillor Fage, you wish to speak?
Hello, Councillor Grant Fage. So item 5, which is your invited speaker, who I can see they're with us this evening, around the Land North development and some of the detail coming out now, which I think there may be still opportunities to comment on. So just a few things that I wanted to mention. Firstly, I think, look, the history of this site is a long and arduous one, but we are now where we are. And I think we have a responsibility to make this development as good as we possibly can for existing residents of Biggleswade and for those who are going to live here. So I think we should really welcome the opportunity to engage positively. I know I do. Just a few comments on this. So firstly, I think we should welcome that this is not actually 400 homes under the current plan. I think it's 350 something. So that I think really helps. Just a few things. So in the way some of this is currently documented, and I apologise if I've misunderstood some of it, but one thing that I would like to get a few assurances on this evening potentially is around the southern boundary and how that will blend neatly with the current development to the north of Biggleswade and Furston Hall Road. So I understand there is a requirement for bungalows across the full length of that southern boundary. My interpretation was that the current plans don't quite show a full length, so maybe we could get some assurances over that. Also on the green wheel, which is ever so important and noted in the neighbourhood plan repeatedly, all new developments should try to enhance the green wheel, which obviously goes around the outside of the town. So I appreciate there'll be engagement with rights of way officers, but I think we need to add on top of that the sensitivity of these particular rights of way, notably the green wheel, because if we are crossing the green wheel at any point, we need some assurances over retaining the rural nature of those rights of way. And just two more briefly. So one is on construction traffic. I think we'd just like some assurances over how we can minimise disruption there, because it is obviously close to existing settlements. And then finally, just on street furniture. I have a development in my ward, which was a Taylor Wimpey one, Orchard Chase, and I walk around it now, and actually they went to some real effort to get some decent street furniture in there that really blended in with the rural landscape, like lovely carved wooden benches, some of it bringing out Biggleswade's history as well. And I wondered if there's opportunities to explore that on this site so that when this development does go ahead, which it will, we can show that we're trying to be sensitive to the rural landscape and integrate with Biggleswade. So those were my points this evening, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fage. We'll move on shortly, I think, to the invited speaker. So we have Person Homes, East Midlands. So we have Andrew, Ben and Gary with us. It looks as though we've got a potential technology issue, but I'm sure we're going to work our way past that. But gentlemen, over to you for an introduction maybe. And then if the presentation comes up, we'll be absolutely fine. Okay, well, we'll wait.
Well, thank you, Councillor. If I start off, because I think we're just going to do some introductions, so hopefully the presentation isn't too integral from that point of view. I think, first of all, I wanted to thank you for the invitation. Thank you for your time this evening. I think very much our view is that, this process, it's important to have that dialogue and that communication, acknowledging Councillor Page's point. I think we understand that development can be contentious at times. Really, I think from our point of view, we want to work with you where we can. We recognise that there might be established views and there might be a history of a site, but we are, as you said, where we are now, and our desire is always to try and work as collaboratively as possible. And I think the other issue I would just emphasise is that we always think early engagement is crucial. I think sometimes as well is that you can get so far down the track on certain applications or the development of certain ideas, and then the ability to then adjust plans or accommodate new suggestions then narrows substantially as well. So I think I would always echo that. Sort of irrespective of past views, we're always keen to engage if people want to try and make things better. I've realised I've sort of jumped straight in there, but I just to introduce myself. So my name's Ben Walker. I'm head of external affairs for Persimmon, so I look after some of our political engagement and outreach. And then to my right, I've got Andrew Gray, who's our planner, and then to the right of that, we've got Gary Culver, who's from our technical team and is one of our engineers on the project. And hopefully between us, we'll be able to deal with all of your questions or queries or anything like that. So we've got a full spectrum of the team here. Very quickly, I just wanted to give you a bit of an overview to Persimmon. So we are, I think, probably about the third largest house builder at the moment based on sort of current completions. But I think the elements I'd really want to emphasise is that we're a 5-star house builder, so that means that our sort of current customer satisfaction rate is about 93.5%. So that's 93.5% of all people who buy a Persimmon home actually being willing to recommend it to a friend or family. Our Trustpilot score is about 4.6 out of 5. So I think we've got a really strong focus on delivering a high quality product, and also having that really strong customer satisfaction as well, which we think reflects the quality of developments. The other points I'd just sort of like to flag is that as part of our remit, we're also really keen to work with local communities. In the last 5 years, we've invested around £2.3 billion into local communities, infrastructure improvements, transport upgrades and things like that. So, we want to ensure that new development contributes to an area and makes a positive difference, not just for those living on the development, but more widely as well. We employ around 5,000 people directly, about 96,000 in our supply chains, and we're also very proud to be a real living wage employer, and also support about 560 trainees and apprentices. The other element I'd just like to flag, and again something that we're particularly proud of, is we've got a really strong record in terms of delivering for first-time buyers, which I think is often a neglected group within the housing debate. About 36% of all homes that we sold last year were to first-time buyers, which is considerably better than a number of our competitors. And we often find, a lot of people that are moving onto our developments are not necessarily people coming from far-flung places or from London and things like that. They're often people living within existing communities. They're the children of people that are already living here. Their families wishing to stay close to parents. They're first-time buyers and first-time movers. And one of the reasons we have those strengths on first-time buyers is that our sort of average selling price is around 15% lower than the UK new build national average. So that I think we're very keen to work with communities, build a good quality product, but also an affordable product for local people. So that's very much our approach. And yeah, as I said, hopefully our presence here today is indicative of the fact that we're really keen to engage with local stakeholders, politicians. Things like that. We've already done a sort of in-person community consultation as well, which has provided us with a lot of feedback. And for us, this is, it's a process rather than an event as well, that, we want to maintain that dialogue throughout this process, obviously, as the application progresses. And then if we're fortunate to get planning approval, we obviously want to continue that dialogue with yourselves moving forward. So that's, very much our approach to being here. I think we'll now hopefully be able to go on to the plans. I'm just going to look at.
Sorry, can I just interrupt? Sorry, there's a car in the car park and the alarm's going off, a red car. Is that yours? Okay.
I don't know if there's any other way of we plug into a. Yeah. So I think as we move on to the plans, it would be helpful to have the visuals.
It's 140 megs or whether it has gone across and it's just moving its way across the server.
Yeah. Yeah.
It might be to do with that.
If I try, we transferred it, didn't you? See if I can do that. That might be easier.
Yeah, which was.
Apologies for this.
It's okay. We will. Sure, it's all under control. But it just takes time. We occasionally have technology issues. It's just one of those things. I have the same problem at work with Teams. I just have a personal work. Teams has a personal vendetta with me. I think it never seems to work properly. So.
Yeah, I think it'll. Yeah, here we go. If we. Download.
Thank you.
Yeah. Waiting with bated breath.
I think for members of the public watching the council meeting this evening, we're trying to make it a little bit more exciting than our usual offer. I think we might be editing YouTube before it goes out.
Yeah. We won't have built as much as said. Okay. I suppose just in the intervening period, we've also done a little bit of an introduction. I don't know if there was any questions prompted from that, but we're very happy to answer anything like that just in the intervening period, and then we'll sort of delve in perhaps more into the detail of the application. Don't know if there was any questions posed from.
Anybody wish to ask anything at this stage? Councillor Strawn.
Might I make a suggestion? Councillor Fage made some observations and he's not a member of the council, so he won't be able to speak in session unless we suspend standing orders. He did raise a couple of points such as the green wheel and the southern boundary. Well, it looks as though we may be getting answers now. But it was just, I'm wondering if those questions he raised could be answered at this stage when if that's just move things forward a bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I ask members, and are you minded for me to allow me to amend suspend standing? Thank you very much. Suspend standing orders to allow Councillor Fage to contribute to this meeting. I'm seeing nods around the table. So, Councillor Fage, should you wish to contribute at any stage, you can do so. That it's formally the standing orders are suspended to allow Councillor Fage to contribute. If you wish to, Councillor Fage, you're also welcome to come to the table. Okay. So the member of the public wishing to speak, but that we've. That will have to be at the end of the presentation now, given that we've done the public open session. Okay, so we have the presentation. I can't see it. So
Yeah, they,
Go to the section 2.
yes, good evening, members. Yeah, if we can just bring up the outline planning consent slide, and once I've spoken about the slide, I'll just say it. Next slide, please. So- Okay, so I'll just do a run through of the development process, and I think it's helpful that if I just take you back to the, sorry, could you put the previous slide up, please?
nearly there.
Thank you. So just to start, before I run through things, I think it's helpful just for everybody just to familiarise ourselves with the outline planning permission. So the site is allocated for residential development, and it's important to recognise that in terms of the principle of development. Obviously, Councillor Fage rightfully pointed out that, as you know, we're very aware that there's been a lot of contention about this application. The outline planning permission was obviously resisted, but it's been allowed. And on that basis, we have to bring a development forward and try and make it the best that we can. So we're trying to do that. The outline planning permission similarly was for 416 dwellings with vehicular access up Furzenhall Road. This subsequent application outline after the appeal includes the access road from Potton Road and Baden Powell Way roundabout. So the outline planning permission via the Section 106 secures 30% affordable housing, 10% custom build. The custom build is where we will put forward a number of house types, and the internal configurations in terms of walls and other things can be configured as an option to the buyer. So essentially we're given more consumer choice, making sure that house types are responsive to the way people want to live. Obviously, in terms of these, the application on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see a blue star between parcel A and parcel B. That is where we are required by a planning condition to provide a bus gate. The bus gate will be an automatic number plate recognition system, preventing people from travelling through parcel B into parcel A. So essentially, once the development is built out, everybody who lives in parcel A will come off the roundabout. So the outline planning permission also secured 7.13 hectares of green infrastructure. That includes the children and the teenage play areas. So you can see on the right-hand side of the slide, this is the one of the parameter plans that the outline planning permission secured. We can see that the leap is at the centre of the development, and there's a teenage play provision on the eastern boundary. The western boundary was essentially an ecological corridor, and that includes land for allotments, community orchard. There's also a noise barrier that will be provided to mitigate the East Coast Main Line, and as part of the planning permission, we have to provide biodiversity net gains. I'll just stop there for some water, but I'll come back. So in terms of one of Councillor Fage's questions earlier, we can see on the southern boundary that there's two hatches. The yellow hatch is where we are required to provide single-storey bungalows. And similarly on parcel A, where there's almost an orange hatch, that is where the bungalows will be provided. So when Councillor Fage said it was of the understanding that bungalows had to be provided along the whole of the southern boundary, he's partially right, but you can see in parcel A that hatch doesn't extend all the way along parcel A. In terms of parcel B, that boundary, we have revised the design statement that's been submitted upon request of the case officer. They will now all be bungalows, and that might be where your confusion, Councillor Fage, has come from, because at the entrance we did have a two-storey bungalow. Sorry, a two-storey dwelling. We've revised that now to be a single-storey bungalow. You'll see that once the council upload it. Next slide, please. So in terms of this outline plan and permission, as opposed to the one that was allowed on appeal, this one provides the betterment of vehicular access off Potton Road, Baden-Powell Way roundabout. And as I said earlier, there's a bus gate that caps no more than 74 dwellings being accessed at that point on the parameter plan earlier. The image in terms of the sections, this is the work that we've been doing in terms of trying to explain to the council how we will establish some attractive landscaping in the first, the fifth, and also 10 years after planting. So you can see the final cross section. There's a nice landscaping starting to be established there. It becomes an attractive spine route to the development, and obviously helps, you know, set the scene for the development. Next slide, please. So in terms of what we saw earlier on the parameter plans, this is our interpretation of it in terms of how we are in accordance with it. So yeah, we do have those single-storey bungalows along the southern boundary, with exception to where it's not hatched, where we are providing a very small parking court, and they would be two-storey dwellings. But essentially, the scheme will be 353 homes in total. Under the Section 106 agreement, 106 homes will be fully affordable, which accounts to 30%, 72% affordable rent and 28% shared ownership. Of the custom build, the 10% requirement equates to 36 dwellings. We've looked at the local housing need and responded to the council's evidence, making sure that we're providing a mix of attractive homes across both Persimmon and Charles Church brands. So we'll be providing two-storey, 2.5, and the bungalows in accordance with the approved parameter plans. We'll also bring forward the green infrastructure. So we've prepared and developed attractive landscaping up that western boundary, making sure it's an attractive place, you know, and sets the scene for the development. And similarly, as I explained earlier, setting the scene as you enter the development from the roundabout. So yeah, all of those requirements earlier in terms of the community allotments, the orchard, the sustainable drainage, the children's play area, we've accommodated public rights of way through the development, making sure that the development is permeable. We'll be accommodating bus stops as well. So just beyond where I explained the bus gate was, there'll be a turn-in area should a bus operator wish to turn around and leave from Furzenhall Road. But we've also designed it to be future-proof should a bus operator wish to then come through Furzenhall Road and leave through the Baden-Powell Way, Potton Road roundabout. So there's options there for flexibility for a bus operator. The development has been designed to be parking standards compliant. So we've gone through very extensive pre-application engagement with the council, including the local highway authority. And as we finalise the development proposal ready for a reserve matters application, we'll be ensuring biodiversity net gains are provided. Next slide, please. So this slide is just a summary in terms of how we are accommodating parking options in terms of the council's parking standards. On the right hand side, there's an illustration there where you can see there's 2 parking spaces in front of a garage, but there's also a dashed line where future parking space can be accommodated. But you'll see before that parking space that we will actually provide a drop curb at the point of construction, making sure that, you know, that the legal requirements is there, and essentially the future occupant of that dwelling can then implement that third parking space if required by them. Each dwelling on the development will also be provided with a trickle charging point. Next slide, please. So this is a slide just outlining where we are providing that sleep the big children's play area right at the centre of the development. The council were very keen to ensure that that is at the heart of the community, and you'll see in subsequent slides how we're designing around that to create a very strong sense of place. We're obviously providing that teenage play area on the eastern boundary, and where we've got number 3 notated, that's where we will provide trim trail equipment. Next slide, please. So this slide follows previous engagement with the town council. So some of the councillors around the table will recognise that this is a revision from a previous meeting that we've held with yourselves. So further to that meeting, we've provided a permeable route, making sure that a maintenance van, for example, can park on the southwestern boundary. You can walk through the children's play area, and it becomes part of the wider development. There's a number of play equipment that follows the town council's input in terms of the sort of play equipment that they would like. So this is a slide that Miracle Design and Play has designed on that basis. There's a number of those play equipment that you'll see have a little disabled sign, so they're designed to be the DDA compliant facilities. Next slide, please. So similarly, we've accommodated the teenage play area. So this is the area on the eastern boundary. And again, we've accommodated the town council's input on this design. So we'll be providing a teenage shelter. Previously, we also, that bit of equipment included a hammock. Following your comments, we've removed that, but we have provided that climbing equipment upon councillors' request. Next slide, please. So this was the theme for the trim trail equipment, which is all about making sure that there's equipment not just guided for children per se, but that everybody can engage and use and utilise, which is about balance and coordinating, sort of lifelong skills. So when you're walking or running, you can engage with these sorts of equipment. Next slide, please. So these are 2 images of where the trim trail locations are. So on the left-hand side, this is up in the northwestern corner of the site. And again, we've accommodated those climbing equipment, slide and bars. And then the image on the right-hand side, that's midway down the western boundary where the trim trail will be close to the sustainable urban drainage pond and the natural pond. And again, for example, the net that follows comments that were previously provided to us. Next slide. I've put this slide in, although it's not a trim trail location or a piece of play. This is a pocket park, and this pocket park is an area of public open space. And I think it's important to just touch upon the use of public open spaces. This one is located off the boulevard spine, which I'll explain shortly. But essentially, as you move through the development, we're trying to create a sequence of places so that there's a sense of place created. There's something memorable about the development. So that's what we're seeking to achieve. This is that location is just next to that bus gate that I outlined earlier. Next slide, please. So one of the things that the council had outlined planning permission required us to do was to provide a whole host of functional elements along the western boundary. So the parameter plan that outlined earlier on the earlier slides, we've got that allotment area right down in the southwestern corner of the site. Just beyond that will be a community orchard. So it's about growing local produce that you can, engage in and use. And then we've got the ecological pond at number 3. So that's trying to promote and encourage biodiversity along this corridor. And then further up at number 4, there's those trim trail locations that I'd mentioned earlier. In terms of the cross section on the top left-hand corner of the slide, the outline planning permission was informed by a noise report. The noise report requires a 4-metre high acoustic barrier to mitigate noise from the East Coast Main Line. So essentially where we've got number 1 on the far right hand side, this will be a 2 metre earth bund with a 2 metre acoustic fence. And that's really trying to integrate that 4 metre barrier as sensitively as we can. We'll provide attractive landscape planting to the front of that, making sure that, you know, we're trying to make this as attractive and as well integrated as we can. Next slide, please. So we've worked with the council quite extensively in terms of the landscape officer and a whole host of other consultants, statutory consultees at the council. The allotment design rationale is informed by the council's open space SPD. So this is how we're trying to design around that. So there'll be a clear, legible layout, a 1.7 metre wide central access route. We will provide a DDA compliant raised bed for somebody who is obviously keen to engage with the allotment space. We'll provide a toilet water facility so that you can get access to water. It will also provide 1.8 metre welded mesh in accordance with the council's SPD, and it'll be designed for long-term use. Next slide, please. So again, just touching upon what the design rationale was there. You can see on the right-hand side, there's an example of a raised bed planter for disabled people. This is about trying to make sure that it's a communal area, that's something that you can use, but also congregate with friends and almost as a social meeting place. So we're trying to make that western boundary as integrated for the future community as we can. Next slide, please. So I just included this slide in terms of the north and eastern boundaries. So the parameter plans that were secured by the council were about trying to make sure that the right of way that runs across the northern boundary is mitigated by some soft landscaping. So we'll provide some soft landscaping along that route, but we'll also provide areas of openness so that future residents have views out as well. So there's a bit of a landscape play there. In terms of notation number 2, this is a bridleway route that's obviously existing. We will slightly widen that, but also upon the Highway Authority's request, we've done extensive consultation with the Highway Authority, and there'll be a separate pedestrian route, but also an equestrian route as well. So that's the north and eastern boundaries of the site. Next slide, please. In terms of the southern boundary, we've obviously touched upon before that we'll be providing single-storey bungalows. The bungalows that we'll be providing, they'll be M43 compliant, so they'll be designed for people who are disabled. They're adaptable, in terms of being able to swing your wheelchair around, navigate and move through the dwelling. Number 2, that is something that we've included upon the council's request. So the council were keen to make sure that you can permeate through into the adjacent development. And number 3, that's essentially where our development proposal will front onto the existing. So we're just respecting that interface. We don't want to turn our back to those existing dwellings because it wouldn't be an attractive outlook for the existing residents. So yeah, we're just designing it on that basis. Next slide. So one of the things that we have to do in terms of the planning conditions is we have to provide a design statement or a design code, and that has to include character areas. So to try and provide something that is logical, informed, but also understandable, we've kept it to 3 character areas. So the boulevard spine is essentially designed around a primary street. We know that it's a primary street because we have to design it to 6.5 metre wide highway standard, and then you'll have a green verge, but also a footpath. So by nature of that requirement in itself, it's a primary street. We've designed it around that basis so that it's clear, legible, and it follows through. So in terms of creating a sense of place and being able to understand how you move through it, that's the logic to the boulevard spine. I touched upon earlier in terms of areas of openness and trying to make sure that it's visually interesting, but also understandable. So at the Furzen Hall Road entrance, we've designed it so that there's a nice interface of forward-looking dwellings. You'll turn the corner, and as you come round that corner, there's a pocket of open space. So we're not just designing the houses, we're also trying to design the landscape so that these character areas create a sense of place. And as you move around, there's a further pocket of open space before you then come through to the interface with the Green Heart, and then you carry through to the access road. The Green Heart, obviously, as I explained earlier, there's a children's play area right at the heart of that area, that character area. And the design rationale or the design logic that we've applied to this is inspired by the Bloor Homes development just off screen. So if anybody's familiar with the Bloor Homes scheme, you'll see that just where that image is cropped, there's a nice attractive green spine that goes north to south. As you move through from the south towards the north, you approach the children's play area, and the plant and the legibility and the structure becomes much more, it integrates that play area right at the centre of the development and creates a strong sense of place. So that's the logic or rationale behind our Green Heart character area. And then the informal edge, this is about trying to pay respect to the development south of Furzen Hall Road. So we're trying to use some of that strong use of buff brick and then bleed it into red bricks as you move into the centre of the development. And then as you interface with the open countryside, again, we'll have a softer buff brick in colour. So we're just trying to pay homage to the surrounding context. Next slide, please. So these are illustrative house types. So as I explained on the previous slide, number one would be the boulevard spine, where we have a consistent red brick, creating that sense of uniformity. And then we'll have pockets of open space breaking up the development as you move through that spine road. Number two is the Green Heart, which is essentially a similar theme, but we're leaning towards a rich red multi-brick, so that when you get to that children's play area, you've got rich red, warm, comforting tones. And then obviously number three is where we're trying to use a red brick, but then bleed it into a buff brick, use of render, and that's a softer interface with the open countryside to the north. And the next slide. So as the previous slides outlined that we will be providing 10% minimum biodiversity net gain, but one of the things that we do for Persimmon and Charles Church is we have a commitment to Homes for Nature. So not only do we try and design the surrounding landscape or areas of public open space to be mutually co-aligned with biodiversity, but one of the things that we do is we actually, on plot, we will provide hedgehog runs, make sure that hedgehogs can permeate through the development. We'll provide bird bricks, bee bricks, for example. So we're trying to not just do the landscape areas really well, but we'll also do the plots on an ecological basis, even though those measures don't actually contribute to your BNG contribution. So that's a planning gain. I think that concludes the planning slides from myself. So I'll pass you back to my colleague Ben.
Yeah, so really, hopefully that was a detailed overview of the scheme and what's being provided and things like that. I think, as I sort of alluded to earlier, I think one of the things that we're really keen to emphasise is that we obviously want to deliver a high quality development, but we also want it to be part of the wider community. And I think there's hopefully some really substantial benefits that the whole community can enjoy, particularly the play areas and things like that. The development will obviously be, providing a lot of large formal and informal recreational areas, a lot of play provision, the wildlife ponds, the community allotments, the orchard, these are things that everyone can benefit from. We'll be investing around £8 million of developer contributions into local services and infrastructure, part of the development. And then as Andy has already alluded to, 30% of the homes will be delivered for those in housing need, and obviously that's a split of shared ownership and affordable rent. Obviously for the it'll be delivered in partnership with a housing association or registered provider. But again, as I also touched on earlier, we're also very proud of our record of private buyers and the demographics and the profile of people that supports. Another point just to touch on, we're particularly keen to engage on there's some public artwork involved with this development as well, and we've had some conversations already with some local organisations, really just to ensure that, again, the artwork that is commissioned is very much a collaboration and something that reflects the history of Biggleswade or the character of Biggleswade or something like that. So this is something that we're particularly keen to hear ideas from, and would welcome any further comments this evening. But yeah, definitely an area where we're keen to engage and collaborate, really. And I think, to be honest, I think that brings our presentation to an end, and we'll sort of shut up now, and because I'm sure you've had enough of us, and we'll answer your questions. So we're in your hands.
Thank you, and I think that's a really, really helpful presentation. I think goes into quite a bit of detail for us. As you've alluded to, we've had some sort of prior conversations, which I think has helped inform some of the work. But this is the first formal consultation with the town council. Councillor Alban, over to you for your first question.
Thank you. So you mentioned there's a bus gate and AMPR is involved there. I wonder if you can tell us more detail about how that actually works. Presumably you have to have a registered registration plates in order for AMPR to work. How is that? How does it actually work? And in addition to that, the residents of Furnell Farm, Furnell Cottage, the area to the north, how will they get access to their dwellings?
Gerald, do you want to take that?
The camera system will only operate for buses and emergency vehicles that are crossing the bridleway. So anyone that has rights to access the bridleway to existing dwellings to the north, they continue to use the bridleway. It won't be looking to capture anyone travelling on the bridleway. In that sense, it will purely be for vehicles crossing from parcel A to B or B to A. And in that sense, yeah, it will just be a case of bus companies will have their registration numbers, etc. And then emergency vehicles, obviously, if they get picked up on cameras, they won't be penalised or anything like that. But that is how it will work. The details of it are still to be defined, whether or not it will have sort of bollards that will rise and fall, or whether it will just be a camera system is yet to be determined. But that's essentially how it will work.
So the residents to the north, in Furnell Farm. So how will they access their dwellings along the existing track?
Yes, it's along the existing bridleway. So the entrance from the entrance from Furnell Road will sort of bear off to the right to feed the dwellings in parcel B, but there will also still be an access onto the alignment of the existing bridleway, and they will continue to use that.
Councillor Barrett?
Slightly different subject. I may have missed it in there, but we've got the split of A and B, which makes perfect sense in the way it's going to be controlled with AMPR and so on for buses. But what's the split there of affordable housing? Is there going to be more in terms of percentage in A or B, or is it going to be split across the two?
It's largely parcel. Well, actually, it is split across parcel A and parcel B. But in answer to your question, yes, there is almost the southern section of the site carries the larger percentage. But I think from recollection, there might be some in towards the northern section.
Yeah, I think just to add in, so obviously there's normally a desire to obviously mix it up, spread it around, so it's obviously creates a balanced community. A lot of the housing associations and registered providers, while wanting that balanced community element, also want it often sort of within closer distances to each other, just so it's easier to manage. So there's normally a balanced judgment effectively made on that, but hopefully that answers the point.
I just ask supplementary. And then in terms of the building timelines, is A going to be done first or B going to be done first, or is it going to happen in parallel?
The intention is to build parcel B first, and then phase it from there. Obviously, we need to get a presence on site very quickly. There's, from recollection, I don't believe there's ecological constraints in parcel B, whereas obviously the wider site, there's archaeological translocation requirements that we've got to take into account to make sure that we're acting responsibly in terms of the ecology. So first and foremost, we'll be seeking to develop parcel B.
Okay. Councillor Jones, then Councillor Agnew.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Much easier to visualise it. So I do appreciate that. I have 3 questions. So the first one is on the noise mitigation. So it's going to take 10 years for all the foliage to grow and mature to the way it needs to be. And then you spoke about an acoustic barrier. So I'm actually looking at the site from the other side now. So that railway line effectively splits our town a little bit. And you're either by a main road or a railway line. So we get that in Biggleswade, right? We get that. But does that mean that all the houses on the other side on that trees estate are now going to be looking at a big barrier like they would if they were driving down the A1, and that's their view instead of the countryside that we've got? Because all the mitigation that you've put in sounds great, but it sounds like from the sound of your presentation that actually that will be hidden behind a big barrier, or that's not the right interpretation because there's no visualization there for us to be able to see. So that's the question.
I think it would be helpful just to go back to the slide that contained an illustrative cross section.
I wasn't sure if when you said acoustic barrier, you meant the foliage by itself, or you actually meant.
It's the boundary slide. Go to that, and the cross section should open.
Yeah. There's a cross section, but essentially the first 2 meters would be an earth bund, and then beyond that we would use an acoustic fence at 2 meters to give us the 4 meter high requirement.
So if you put that into peasant language, because I don't work in your world, so when you say
Well,
an earth bond, what does that mean?
Yeah, so you can see that the earth rises to a height of 2 meters, and beyond that is a 2 meter timber fence, which is 4 meters in total.
From the other side, they're seeing a fence now looking over instead of the green, and they wouldn't really, until the foliage rises above the fence, they wouldn't really see much green anymore. So the countryside views are gone, and we won't even see houses from that side. It would just be the fence that you look at. If you were on Sycamore, for example, on the other side of the train tracks, is that the correct understanding?
The requirement for the earth bund was part of the outline plan and permission, and the outline plan and permission was informed by a detailed landscape visual impact assessment. So the mitigation would have been assessed at that point in time.
Just sounds like a lot of words to me, if I'm honest. So the question is, will they see a fence?
Well,
It doesn't, I get what you're saying. I'm not having a go. I'm just trying to understand what the answer is to the question. I don't need all the bump. I just want to understand, is that what our
I think your point is that effectively, if you're the other side of the train looking at it. So obviously at the moment you will from that side you would look at a combination of the earth bund, which is rising 2 meters above the ground as well.
Yeah.
And then there is the timber acoustic fence. So I think your description of the A1 isn't quite the right one to use. So it will be a timber fence. And then when you were talking about obviously the landscaping is effectively on the other side, because that's on the development side of the bund as well. So yeah, and then that would rise. So you're effectively probably looking at a raised bund, the timber acoustic fence, and then sort of trees behind it as well. And as opposed to I guess you should say prior to development, where you would just be looking at a flat green field, so it'll be slightly more raised. But I think the idea is that it would be more attractive and more landscaped significantly as well.
And are there any mitigations or anything that can be done to mitigate that? Because obviously that's a lot of people who all of a sudden in our town are now effectively. Is there a balance that can be achieved at any point?
Paint it blue.
Yeah, well, I think, I mean, potentially something we can go away and have a look at. I mean, I don't know what you're thinking in terms of can effectively a little bit more of the landscaping be on the other side of the bund potentially. That might
Maybe,
be
yeah.
that might be one option. But I think we'd have to think about obviously the efficacy of the bund, and you want it to
I get
work
that.
and all
I
of
suppose
that.
it's just to put it on the radar, because effectively in my mind, as I'm looking at it now and I'm visualizing it, it feels like the people on the other side of the tracks are effectively being blocked, and we're putting a divide in between rather than making one big community. And I get the train naturally does that
Yeah.
anyway, which isn't helpful to anybody. But
Yeah.
if there's anything that could be done to mitigate that, to make it more of one community rather than a split community, and I suppose a fence or a wall or whatever words we want to use to describe it, it's like a stop, isn't it? It's like a get out sign, even if it's not intended in that way.
Obviously, we can go away and think, but I think the point that strikes me immediately to mind is, obviously I've got the benefit of knowing the site, and there is a rise in main up that just right behind where we're proposing the bund. So whilst we could look at the sorts of vegetation we might be able to plant, I think we potentially will be restricted in terms of needing to retain maintainable access to the rising main and any legal requirements that
I
goes
will
with
leave
that.
it in your hands to think about, but it'd be a shame for the legacy of this development to be at the Biggleswade divide or the Biggleswade wall. That would be.
I just didn't want to disregard your comments.
No, that's fine, but I also don't want to be bogged down in technical words that are unnecessary when we're trying to have a conversation. Thank you for answering that. The second question was about, to pick up on Councillor Barrett, Councillor Alban's points about timelines and the access road building. So I appreciate there's a lot of things you're doing all at once, but at what point do you start the access road at the same time as starting the development? Or I'm just trying to understand at what point that gets built in before people start accessing
Gary,
the
do you
site.
want to?
Yeah, so you're asking if we'll start the housing development at the same time as the access?
Yeah, from Potham Road, from Baden Powell, sort of that, so the King's Reach sort of roundabout way.
It honestly completely depends on timeframes with technical approvals from Central Beds Council and obviously with planning permissions that come forward. But obviously we have to form some kind of access for us to even get onto the site. So in an ideal world, we would build an access prior to starting any houses, but it honestly just depends on how quickly Central Beds will review and provide technical approvals and
I wish you all the best of British luck with that one. And then my last question, if that's okay, was just a few more reassurances on the green wheel and access, just thinking about the walk up to the RSPB, for example, that I know a lot of people do over the weekends, and just thinking now if they're going to have to walk up and around, or if there's still a bit of pathfinding done within the development for people to sort of cut across.
Well, first of all, obviously, we can only control what is within the red line application in terms of our development site. But we have reached out to Cliff, I think it is, who is behind the green wheel. So there has been some engagement with the relevant parties, and we have requested some examples of signage that they would look to accommodate to give recognition to the green wheel. And yeah, we're happy to try and accommodate that signage, at the relevant parts, just to help the wayfinding and
I think that'd be
give
really
acknowledgement
helpful.
to it. So,
Thank you.
Good. Councillor Agnew.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you very much for the presentation. So I live in King's Reach, and nice as it is right now, for many years it has been disruption for many people who were subject of different series of stages of that construction. So my comments and questions will be about construction. First of all, and this is probably an obvious question, but I'm still going to ask because I want it on record. Will you be providing a named site manager and their telephone number, direct telephone number to the council and all local authorities? I assume it's a yes.
yeah, we'll be providing a construction management plan, and the details will be set out within that report. That report will also talk about where people have any concerns, they can contact us directly, but should they also wish to do so anonymously, there's also a persimmon health and safety element as well. So the concerns, whatever they may be, can be reported to the relevant body.
Yeah, and if you allow me to continue, so I have a couple of questions. One of them is whether what the construction hours will be? Do you know it already now? And is it somewhere clearly defined?
From recollection, I think the section 106 talks about codes of conduct. So I think it's in Appendix A to the section 106, but that does talk about what would typically be applied for development in terms of hours of operation, and that on that basis, that's what would be put into the council as part of the discharge of condition.
And how will you control the dust? Because that has been a major issue in where I live.
I think with
Simply from just different dust suppression techniques with wetting down roads. So in summer, obviously you have to combat dust. So what we would usually do is on a general day throughout construction, someone will drive around the site with a water valve and spraying down the roads, making sure that dust gets into the air.
And you know how during the construction, some of the HGVs that drive out of the construction, they spread the mud across the roads and that gets out into the main waste.
Yeah.
What will you be doing?
I think it will be outlined in the construction management plan, but generally there'll be some kind of wheel wash facility prior to actually leaving the site.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I probably have more, but I'll leave the colleagues first too.
Okay, next I've got Councillor Strawn. Thank you, Councillor Agnew.
Thank you very much. Moving ahead and looking a bit further into the future, there's obviously a lot of community areas and probably some common areas. Is it the intention that the town council would be taking those over in due course and managing them? And can we be assured that we're not going to have the situations there are on other estates in the town where community areas have been left in the control of a management company or similar organisation, which then doesn't work in the best interests of the residents, because the residents are paying council tax on one hand and they're also paying the developers or a sub company from the developers a management fee, because I'm sure that personally I would like to see the council take control of that sooner rather than later, although I very much doubt I'll be around when it comes to that. But is that the intention?
I think at this stage it's an open discussion. I think it's not something that we would rule out in terms of saying I think there's a conversation to be had with the town council potentially on the areas that they would want to adopt, and then we can effectively look at the terms on that. To be clear though, I think a management company will be established regardless. I think the debate will be about which assets fall under the management of the management company, and then which ones are potentially adopted or not. Like due to the nature of most modern developments, local authorities are not willing to adopt wholesale estates in the way they were historically. So a management company is normally required for some element, but I think the degree to which elements of the development are then transferred over, that's a further discussion which we're very welcome to have. Incidentally, not often our experience in many parts of the country as well. We often get lots of councils not wanting to adopt certain pieces of infrastructure and things like that. So that's why there is a requirement for the management company.
Could I urge you to have discussions with the town council sooner rather than later on that side, so that we're all working together to get the best result for the new residents in that area? Because I think that there's obviously been talk about leaseholds and service charges and things like that. And I don't want people coming into Biggleswade but be paying a large service charge for community areas which in fact should be under local authority control in one form or other, whether it's CBC or town council. So could we please have some discussions on that sooner rather than later? And having had my say there, just one other question on infrastructure. Internet connections in Biggleswade are pretty awful, particularly on the King's Reach area. Will there be good internet connections into this new development?
So as a business, we used to actually have our own internet service provider, which actually we've recently sold to another provider. But the idea is that effectively you have that full fibre connectivity on day one, because the challenges that that many developers had is that often, when you're reliant on Openreach effectively providing the connections, you're really in the lap of the gods as to when they choose to provide those things. So we will normally provide that internet connectivity as part of the development. So hopefully it should be quicker, and that is now being run by a different company, but they have a selection of internet providers that they can offer to our customers. But there will be effectively that fibre connection immediately.
Thank you for those answers.
Okay, I've got Councillor Fage, you indicated, so I'm going to go to Councillor Fage. Then I have Councillor Alban after that, then Councillor Barrett, then Councillor Russell.
Okay, thank you for all of this detail. I have to say, I do think there's some noble aspirations in here. Like when I see when we were envisaging 400 odd houses on this site, I've seen from other applications, there's a big difference between 350 and 400 on certain plots of land, and it enables you the space that you need to get those green edges and weaving some of it in. So I can see those aspirations here, and I think we're grateful for that. So on these bungalows, sorry to drag us back a few slides, I just want to be absolutely sure, because obviously this is quite a key thing for people who live on that boundary. I don't know whether we have the slide. I think it was one of the first ones in this pack. You guys will know.
Slide. So the first one, I thought.
Oh yeah, so it is. Okay, so yeah, so this is what I have on my screen as well. So I'm just looking at the development brief. So that makes sense then. So we would have bungalows all the way along that southern edge with Mountbatten Drive, I think it is along there. Okay, and then they'd come all the way across, because the main thing is that where you have properties facing out onto Greenwood. Yeah, okay, so I am more comfortable with that.
Yeah, there's only one instance of a parking court, and that's on the lighter yellow that's not hatched as bungalows, and they'll be at an oblique angle set back from.
Okay, so we do actually have that soft edge, as soft as we can get, I think, realistically.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's good. That was my main comment, and it's good that you're engaging with Cliff Andrews. I think it's this tricky bit here with. Is it footpath 14, Bridle Way, the one running north to south, and then the one running east to west? I think we just need to look really carefully at what some of those crossings look like and keeping them soft and in keeping whilst also safe. And I think we probably have other examples of that on the adjacent estate where, there's sort of some quite neat fencing and some generous landscaping. So it keeps those rights of way as rural as possible, but mindful of the fact that there will be vehicle movements. So that was my main comment.
Thanks. I'm just going to come in at that point, just in relation to green wheel, because when we spoke about the green wheel, it will be a wheel of sorts, but some of it will be inside the road. So on the northern access route, am I right in saying that the pathway will be to the southern side of the road rather than the northern side? Because I think that's the way it was viewed previously. So essentially the walkway would be to the south. So it's a wheel, but it's not strictly completely to the north. Will that be the way? Yeah. Okay. Just a clarification. I'm going to move on to Councillor Alban's question, then, please.
Yeah, I've got a couple. So you've got an image that shows it's footpath 14, I think, but a cross section of it somewhere. Can we have a look at that?
I think it's the next slide. Is this the one you're referring to?
Yeah. No. There was another one that's specifically the right of way to the north. It's a cross section, and it shows a horse.
Northern and eastern boundaries. That's slide. No, you're getting right there. Just start with.
Okay. Well, my question is, it's. I think you talked about widening it to allow equestrian and pedestrian access, but it shows a vehicle on there. Or is that not a cross section of footpath 14?
No, so the cross section of number 2 is the existing Bridle Road right away.
Okay. So
I think 14. Number one, yeah, so,
Number one.
Okay, fine. That's good because we don't want too many cars going up there. Okay, so my next question, I understand that the dwellings will be to 2030 standards with solar panels, batteries, electric vehicle charging and so on. Are you doing anything about grey water harvesting? Because especially now we're in a drought situation, there is a water shortage and that's one way of addressing it.
Yeah, it's something that will come out when we get some drainage strategies. The surface water drainage strategy can hold like infiltration anyway, so it can all be kept on site. One thing that usually is pressing or can be implemented is water butts. But we've got a site that is solely infiltration anyway, so it's all we should do what we can do in that sense anyway. But
So it's looking like grey water harvesting within a dwelling. Are you doing anything about that?
No, the extent of it would be the water butts.
Okay.
Essentially.
Okay, you considered that.
But just to add into that, effectively the design of the homes is designed to be highly water efficient. Is the point? So actually, some of the yield from that's the way to sort of effectively try and limit some of the water usage for the site. Even though I sort of understand the direction you're going in.
Okay, Councillor Barrett, and then Councillor Russell.
Thank you. Yeah, mine's slightly, it's not really a question, it's more of a request to the rest of colleagues as well, is that around all the questions around section 106 and all the various different conditions that need to be met along the way and the timings on the buildings, I think we've got to be much more proactive as a council to actually I'm talking about Biggleswade Town Council here, to actually find out all of these dates and all of these timings and all these things and when they're happening, and we must be proactive about it. I appreciate that, we'd like you to sort of engage with us and continue to do that, but I think the onus must be on us, as we've discussed in the past, that if we don't do that, we'll be at the mercy of others, and then we'll be told what may have happened or why it didn't happen. I think we just have to be much more proactive. So can I ask formally that we do that as part of this development, so we can actually approach it in a slightly different way than we've done in the past?
I think we've made a note of that already, haven't we? Yep, so that's noted, Councillor Barrett, thank you. Councillor Russell.
Thank you. I'm following on from that. I'm just wondering how much consultation as a town council we get when some of these details come forward. And of course, it is always the detail that's difficult. I'd like to pick up on Councillor Strawn's point about management. We really do not want management companies managing open spaces. And as you rightly said, Councillor Strawn, duplicating charges to people, because we've got a large public realm team and it will duplicate charges, council tax and management fees. And I don't know what happens in other parts of the country, but you said something about councils don't want to take on open areas. Well, one assumes that Central Beds will take on the highways areas, but the other open areas there are all the sorts of areas that Biggleswade Town Council manages at present. So I just want to emphasise that point very strongly. And also to say that usually the way it works is that Central Beds take these on and then delegate to us, but we want to be absolutely clear where we stand on that. And then one of the things to be determined in detail, presumably, is off-site highways, and off-site highways were a big problem for a lot of our residents. It's mitigated by the fact that you've only got, I think it's 74 houses in Plot B, but how much disruption is there going to be to existing residents in Potton Road? And there was even going to be some calming in the narrowest road in Biggleswade, which is Lime Tree Walk, and we were horrified when we first saw some of this. So quite what disruption is there going to be for nearby residents? Because things like putting in double yellow lines in front of cottages where they don't have any off-street parking, where the front door is on the street. I'll never forget the man who was in tears here a few years ago when this was being discussed, because he lives in one of those cottages and his wife is disabled. And he said, how am I going to manage if I can't park there? You know, and I mean, it's this sort of thing that really impacts on residents.
One thing I will say to touch on the double yellow line thing, that still has its own consultation process that has to go through.
Right.
And that's a public consultation. So
Right.
everyone will get to comment on that. Just although it's the highway mitigation measures are approved to outline, say when we go through the formal section 278 application,
Okay.
that still has to be consulted on. Anything like parking restrictions, speed limit changes, things like that, that still has to be consulted on. When you refer to disruption, do you mean disruption whilst the works are going on for those particular highway improvement schemes, or?
I mean, making things even more difficult than they are now. It is quite difficult to drive from one end of Potton Road to the other, or at least from the railway bridge to the junction with Drove Road. You very, very rarely do that without stopping at least once.
Yeah.
But then, as I said, places like Lime Tree Walk are very narrow anyway.
Yeah.
And then the talk of putting lumps and bumps and that down there just sounds a bit over the top, if I might say so.
Yeah, I think obviously I can't comment on every single one in detail. There's quite a few, but from my review of them, the majority of the schemes are largely to create safer crossing places for pedestrians or improve visibility for most users or slow people down. So I think where you talk about raised tables and things like that, there's not many. I don't think there's any schemes in there that introduce a speed bump down halfway down the road. It's more a cross junction where we'd have a raised table. It won't be a case of there'll be 2 or 3 speed bumps as you go down the road. It'll just be at junctions where you're getting people crossing, providing tactiles, so visually impaired people have somewhere to cross properly, and it will be at one level. So for disabled people, wheelchair users, etc. And you're not going down drop curves and back up and things like that.
Okay, so we have to wait and see.
So all of the
detail comes forward.
The detail will come forward, but from my review of it, there's not anything in there that is massively going to put obstructions in the way, if you like. But as I say, anything that will change how the road is used will have to go through a consultation, like you said, parking restrictions or speed limits.
You see, what I'm talking about what we saw before, was when it was going to be access to 400 houses. It's now 74, so I'm hoping it's going to be a lot less, which is, I think, what you're saying.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, okay. Can I move on, Chairman, please? I remember talking at the consultation about render, and you were still using render on some of these houses, which you seem to think is better for the countryside aspects of this. And I really don't think it's a very nice way to finish houses. And my house, as I think I said at the time, is half rendered. It's really not the best. And the other thing I just wanted to mention in here is something that I go on about a lot. There is a Biggleswade vernacular, and it's about using bricks, contrasting bricks in detail. And on one of your slides, there was actually what looked like a band of different coloured bricks along the middle between the ground and first floor. And I'm just thinking if you could look at that a bit more about what, some of the older houses in Biggleswade and even some of the newer houses. There's a new estate off London Road that's used that Biggleswade vernacular, just making it feel more part of the town. So I'll leave it at that, but I do hate render. And one last thing I want to bring up is something that Councillor Fage mentioned in passing. We do have a neighbourhood plan for Biggleswade. It does have detail in it that affects the design of houses, particularly with storage of cycles and bins and all that sort of thing. Are you looking at that as well as all the design guides from Central Bedfordshire? Because I'd just add that our neighbourhood plan was made after the current local plan, so it's a very new plan, 4 years old. And I would hope that you are looking at that alongside everything else. So I'm just emphasising that point. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. I think there's some really good questions there, and hopefully that's been helpful. I've got a couple. I'm going to just re-emphasise the point about service charge. I think it's been very well documented. The town council would very much welcome the conversation. We'll leave that there. We talked about off-site highways, and one of the things, obviously, there's a number of other developments that are in progress at the moment. And given that we've got impacts on Sun Street, we've got impacts on other junctions around the town, it seems to me that each of the developments are trying to mitigate the same issue at the same point. So, whether that is almost the first developer that gets in, then ends up solving the problem, which means the others don't, or how does it work so that you're not all trying to solve the same problems? And would you be considering working together so that one developer deals with one issue, one deals with another? How does it work so that the best options are put forward?
I'll let Gary come in indeed.
So with these offsite improvements, these are all conditioned, obviously, as part of the outline, but in terms of some, joint up thinking and maybe some of the extents of the works that need to be done, that really will come with us and other developers when they're engaging with central beds and highways team, and really talking to them whether or not central beds say, well, okay, developer A down the road is doing this, and but you're doing this. Actually, how about we do this instead? So that's really the only way. I think the point is central bed should be looking at the cumulative impact and effectively looking at it in the round. It's not necessarily in some respects we are told you've got to do this to make this acceptable from highways, but that cumulative in the round look, and I say this with a degree of caution looking around the room, that have some faith in Central Bedfordshire Council, but that should really be coming from the Highways Authority. That's not, I think, something necessarily for us to comment on.
Agreed, but the reason I've raised the point is because I wouldn't say there's a lack of confidence in central beds. I think that, but what I would say is that it would be really, I think, worthwhile for perhaps you to consider consulting with the highways team and with the planners at central beds to link in with the other developers, so that it's not incumbent on central beds to be coming to you. Almost look the other way around to say, look, we realise there are other developments. Is there a way perhaps you could be proactive and go to central beds and say, look, we know that things are happening in other areas. Can you help us out here?
I think just we can. I mean, there is an extensive process of engagement going backwards and forwards with them. I think with the way that funding for these projects normally works, the convening power really, they are the ones that are looking at things in the round. They and that is their job as the Highways Authority, and effectively, in order to justify contributions to us, they need to be saying, well, there's this impact here, and if you be doing that, and then this development here is happening. But that sort of central in the round look at it, we wouldn't necessarily have access to the same data that they do. So I think I can assure you there's ongoing and regular engagement about how these things are operating, things like that. But I think that central convening role on how are various highways works, improvements, upgrades, how is that money being spent? That is really for Central Bedfordshire Council.
I'll take that. Councillor Fage.
Just say, I think the original 400 house application, without the relief road round the north, it had to consider highways in a slightly different way to when that was put in place. So it isn't just central beds, because there's national highways as well. And the 3 roundabouts that need to be sorted as part of Land East, quite rightly with Land North, they'll say, this is the incremental impact of our development will make a contribution to a larger scheme. But then even Land East are now saying, with Tempsford coming, we need national government to come and sort some of this stuff out. So it's true that it's for central beds to convene, and looking at, it's particularly these so Land East in particular is the big one. And it's, as we know, Councillor Foster, the access to the A1 to the south of town. And there will be an impact from this development. And so when schemes come forward, it needs to be equal, fairly contributed given the number of houses. But then we literally had the head of highways here highways planning here, going through that in the design code forum for land ease. So like the engagement is there, it's just not always played out in public.
Cool. Okay, I think I had Councillor Russell, then Councillor Barrett.
I just wanted to follow on from that and say, you can see that we're concerned, particularly with the A1. We don't know whether Tempsford will go ahead or not. We have had an email as councillors from a colleague ward councillor of Councillor Fage's to say that actually the chief executive of Central Beds is now going to convene a meeting with National Highways and his own highways officers to see, and with the Department for Transport, to see if things can be sorted. Because it is ridiculous what we see in different Section 106s about how people are required to help this and help that. And it can't be done. And there will have to be national money. It can't just be done on the pot of contributions that come from the different developments. If we're going to do something sensible with the A1, not only around Biggleswade, but in East Bedfordshire, which is one of the worst sections of the A1, as you probably know, it has to be done at a different level. And I think, you know, from what Councillor Foster said, what Councillor Fage has said, and what I'm now saying, you just need to be aware of it. And we are very strongly pushing in any way we can as a town council to look after our town's interests.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Councillor Barrett, and I think then we'll conclude.
I think Councillor Russell picked up on some of the points, but I'll just reiterate what I said before about the proactivity side of things, that I don't think it's Persimmons or any of the builders to do some of the things that you were mentioning. I think Central Beds have to do that, which I think was the response we got. But I think the detailed knowledge around what happens in and around Biggleswade is obviously in and around this room. So therefore, it's so important that that more detailed understanding of the local area is pushed back. And we do that because, again, experience tells us if we wait for others to tell us what's happening, it's too late for us. So we've just got to change the way we do this, I think, through the clerk and other ways to proactively do that, whether it's through the joint committee or whether it's through other means. Councillor Russell just mentioned about the other things that are happening. I just feel the onus is on us. And I just reiterate that point again, because I can see this all going the way others have gone.
I don't disagree, Councillor Barrett. Well, I was making the point that developers can also take some responsibility, but as has been advised, so we'll leave that there for now. So unless there's any other questions, it's a member of the public still there. Go on, we'll take that question. I'll if the member of the we suspended standing orders for Councillor Fage, why not? Thank you, Councillor Russell. I'll correct my original judgment. If the member of the public is still there, does the member of the public wish to speak? Okay. In which case, thank you very much for your presentation and your contribution and the answers to our questions. I think you know by now that we're very keen to work with you. The fact that you've responded very positively to our recent conversations and this evening as well has been really, really helpful. It's good to meet you at the consultations. I think we've got a better development that's going to be coming forward as a result of us working together. And I think the more we can do that, the better. So thanks very much for coming.
Likewise, thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'd normally say no. I just, members know what I'm going to say, so I'm not going to say it this time. Thank you very much for coming.
Reinstate standing orders.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Yes. Got it. I think the clerk was watching me as well. She was going to make sure. Okay. So at this stage, we will now reinstate standing orders and move on with the rest of the meeting. Thank you very much. So, given that we've now got the next item on the agenda is members' questions. Any members' questions, please? No. So minutes of meetings. So the minutes of meetings will be considered at the on the 8th of September. So nothing for us to consider, and the same thing applies. We've got the minutes of TCM attached. Noted. Thank you very much. Good. Matters arising. There's no matters arising in relation to TCM on the basis we're just receiving it. So moving on to item 9A, TAN banking provision update. That's the town clerk.
I did send round a report, so I don't know if people want me to still say anything or whether you've all had a chance to read that at all. But to summarise, I obviously visited Amptill and their banking hub with the representative from the town council and the former postmaster of Marston Mortain, who was very involved in getting the hub up and running, and it is basically managing that hub. It seems to me it's a slightly different scenario than we've got here at Biggleswade, in that Amptill did actually tick all the boxes that were required for Link when they're considering locations, in terms of they didn't have a bank within a 10-mile radius, they only had one ATM. They didn't have a post office that wanted to offer enhanced services. So that obviously all went in their favour. Having said that, it took an awful lot of legwork, research, and other things to make the submission, which from the initial timeline from 2019, it didn't actually open until 2024. Some of that was partly to do with COVID and different restrictions being put in place. But it was a thriving hub. Lots of people, when I was there for about 30 to 45 minutes, it was constantly busy, lots of people coming and going. And it obviously is a real asset to the town. They believe it brings in further visitors because people are coming to the town, but that also then benefits local businesses. And I believe that the hub itself is actually used by those local businesses as well. So really that's it in terms of my report back and the information that I got while I was there.
Thank you. Any comments, members? Councillor Russell?
So I think we're saying that we're no further forward because we don't tick enough boxes.
At this stage, it seems that
Yeah.
way. I think we were broadly aware of that scenario, but that doesn't mean that we are against the principle of continuing the conversation, which I think we should do, certainly my own view, and I think the views of others. But if we're not at a point where we are, you tick all the boxes, it's unlikely that we would be fully supported. I'm going to go to Councillor Barrett and then if anyone else wishes to speak.
Absolutely. And I think one of the other things we've discussed briefly before is about the enhanced post office that was mentioned there. And that's a service that could provide a number of the banking hub facilities that we may need in the town. We don't know for sure, but I think if we're going to, as Councillor Russell says, if we're going to put a weight behind anything, that's probably the way we would need to go. That doesn't stop us looking at the banking hub in the future if our criteria changes, or the UK, is UK criteria changes as well. But I think it's the enhanced post office that we should be putting our support behind.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Councillor Strawn?
I think it's absolutely essential we pursue something better than we've got at the moment, because there must be the ability for people to pay in cheques to all the banks in Biggleswade somewhere, whether it's a post office hub or banking hub. But because there's some banks will not accept cheques now, and the post office was able to take some of them, but not others, and it's absolutely ridiculous. We've got lots of businesses in the town. The town is growing, and we need to be able to provide those facilities in some form or other. Certainly, we must get a better facility than we've got at the moment, generally, because when you go to a particular bank which has a kind of presence in the town, and they can't print anything off because they haven't got a shredder to shred the paperwork if it goes wrong, that's absolutely ridiculous. So we do need to look at improving what we've got. Appreciate that there may be difficulties, but we've got to keep fighting.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with the Councillor Strong. I think we've got to keep going. I think we've agreed. So we'll move on to item 9B, which is the invitation to discuss Arlesey Council's McDonald's. Over to the clerk there again.
Yeah, so basically the clerk from Arlesey Town Council has contacted me to ask if members would be willing to get together with their members to discuss a proposed McDonald's development that will be coming to the northern end of Arlesey, because obviously Biggleswade has been through this process in the past. I do understand that was some time ago. So I think it was just to ask if there would be representatives that would be happy to meet up with the members from Arlesey Town Council to discuss Biggleswade's experience and for them just to ask certain questions. They've got concerns about parking and litter management, and I think that's their main concerns. And how McDonald's fulfilled any promises that they offered as part of the development.
Members, thoughts? Councillor Barrett and then Councillor Russell.
If it's just fact finding, then I think that's fine. But if there's sort of a hidden agenda here, which is for us to support them in it not happening or is happening, then I think they should let us know what it is they're looking for our support for. If it is purely just historical information, then I think that's fine. But I'm not necessarily sure I would be supportive of us supporting one way or t'other at this stage unless we knew more.
Perfect. Councillor Russell.
I'm struggling to think back to our experience and what we might contribute, actually. I mean, what we have in Biggleswade is a large site. I think the key issue for us, we did have litter problems. So I think that was a key issue. But it's a large enough site. I don't think there have been car problems in any way. Apart from that, I'm not sure what we can contribute, because as Councillor Barrett has said, we really shouldn't be taking one side or t'other in this.
Councillor Strawn, did you want to?
No, I think this is the problem. We can't get involved in their particular planning issues, but we can say that there were initial problems with litter, but certainly for some time, but they seem to work that out and come to some arrangement where I think it has improved considerably, because I don't actually remember hearing anything particular about it. But I think we should help out our neighbouring councils, but in terms of information, but I think that's about it.
My view on this is I think it wouldn't hurt to meet with them just to if we've got anyone that's willing to just to attend a meeting, then if you want to put me down, I'll happily meet with them. I think so the thing that we can learn from it is really it's not just about McDonald's, actually. It's about what talking about litter in particular. Central Beds have their involvement in this, because if they don't provide enough litter bins around the area, that can also cause a problem. So I think there's something around what the council can do and what Central Beds can do and how they can liaise with McDonald's. So I'll happily arrange to meet with them. If anyone else wishes to get involved, feel free. Shall we move on then to item 10, planning applications? So we've got 10A, 17 calls for erection of a single-storey extension. And as it says in the agenda, it's been reconsidered following receipt of amended plans. Any comments on this one? Councillor Barrett?
I think in the past we were no objection to this.
Yep.
I don't think anything's massively changed. I think it's subject to neighbours from us.
Agreed. Okay, so subject to neighbours again on that one. And then 10B, 17 Daffodil Drive, single-storey rear extension with roof light. Again, subject to neighbours. Anyone else commenting? Happy with that? And then I think the clerk mentioned about we've got the electricity works permitted development. Strictly speaking, it's not a consultation. Perhaps you give us the correct wording that you've noted, so I don't get that wrong.
Yeah, I'll just read out an email that we received about this application. So it says the application relates to a notification under Schedule 2, Part 15, Power Related Development, Class B, Electricity Undertakings, B.A. of the Town and Country Planning General Permitted Development Order as amended GPDO. Therefore, the council can only consider the relevant limitations and requirements set out within the legislation. Public consultation is not usually undertaken in relation to this type of notification, since it relates to the lawfulness of the development under the GPDO. As such, the letter did not contain a deadline in this instance. However, if the Town Council wish to make the applicant aware of any comments they have, they can contact them directly.
Councillor Alba and then Councillor Barrett.
I think we note it is permitted development after all, and there's not a lot really we can say on it.
And Councillor Barrett.
And the whole thing is for the emergency services.
Yep.
That's what it's for. So I think we should support it.
Fine. So Noted. Okay. Thanks for the detailed explanation and the wording though. I nearly remembered it. Okay, 11A, no planning application outcomes. So, and 12A, financial administration will be coming on the 8th of September. Nothing on 13. 14, public open session. Any members of the public? Councillor Fage?
Just quickly on what we've heard from the developers this evening, like I think the fact that we're looking at 350 houses clearly does make a bit of a difference to some of this layout, and the fact that they're here, I think we should just engage with in good spirits, and I think we've done that tonight. Just a thought on this and other planning applications, and it's sort of remarks that Councillor Barrett made. So I think there's a really good opportunity to be proactive over some of this. So I was just it's not every application all the time, but there are certain applications that the detail, to Councillor Russell's point, really, really matters. And Town Council and ward councillors are not consulted on all of these discharges of conditions, but it will be the same planning officer overseeing this application. It's you've got his name right, it's Thomas Mead. And if there are certain conditions that you think, oh, hang on a minute, this one's really important. There's one on rights of way, for example. There's one on the raised tables. If there's 4, 5, 6 that you think, hang on a second, this is something that we really should have our say on, there's no harm in asking the planning officer, hey, could you just prompt us when you're likely to be considering this discharge of condition? And let's see if that works. And if central beds are responsive to it, then there's potentially a win-win. So I don't know, that was just a thought. It'd probably help ward members as well, because I often don't know when a lot of these discharges of conditions are coming along.
Thank you, Councillor Fraser. And I think that's actually a good idea. If we are able to contact Thomas Mead and see if there's any way we can get that arrangement, that would be really helpful. Okay. Oh, here we go. Right. So we are coming to the end of our formal meeting. So members of the Town Council are asked to vote to enter an exempt session due to the confidential nature of the business to be transacted. This will include matters relating to the financial affairs of the authority and our ongoing negotiations. If members resolve to proceed into the exempt session, members of the public and press will be excluded from the meeting under section 1(2) of the Public Bodies Admission to Meetings Act 1960, and the live streaming of the meeting will be terminated. Members, are you happy, please? Okay, in which case the meeting is closed. Thanks.